Brandi C Shelton, also known as B, is the CEO of Utilize Consulting Service and Management Group. Utilize Consulting Service and Management Group is a platform developed to help the dreams of sole proprietors and CEOs by working side by side with them to understand and develop business tactics from a microscopic level. Over the last 10 years, CEO Brandi Shelton has listened to and observed the obstacles that many new business owners have. Welcome to the show, Brandi. We're so happy to have you as a guest with us today. Let's get started by you telling us a little bit about yourself.
So my background comes from being in human resources and career services.
Okay.
Where I guess the pivot of helping people start and operate their businesses kind of started.
Okay.
So as a career services representative, I was responsible for a group of individuals that didn't have what people considered the right set of skills.
Okay.
Or professional stamina, for that matter.
Be more specific. What does that mean? Like break that down a little bit.
They had troubled backgrounds. Some of them had lackluster appeal in regards to how they looked, how they act, how they spoke.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time working with them individually and collectively to change the momentum. And then some of them, especially those who did not have the skill set as far as working for someone because of their troubled past, helping them to understand how to operate their own service-based business so that they can still be able to earn income for their families.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I started.
Okay.
And then pushing forward in my human resources, I've been a part of HR for, I don't even remember when I started. It's been that long.
You started at 5.
And human resources is just a component of understanding rules, regulations, laws, and then applying them to, day-to-day activities. But it's a little different because you also have to have an understanding of what is required by the law standards, so the state, federal, and local laws, which is the part that you have to learn how to teach other people. So whether you are a sole proprietor and have to understand how to pay yourself, or you are a multi-billion-dollar corporation and you have to understand what's allowed by the law standards. There's no depiction of you're greater than most or greater than none. You have the same rules apply to you no matter if you make $1 or $1 million or $1 billion.
Right.
You still have to follow the same rules when it comes to working with people. And that's what human resources really is understanding how to work with people in a positive, productive environment, but also providing them the resources and the ability to grow beyond the position that they currently hold. And that's, to me, what human resources is. And that's why Utilize came about, because that's the most important part of being and owning and operating a business, is understanding what people need, understanding what people want, and then following the rules and regulations in order for them to achieve it.
Okay. Tell me why, when you were in your HR roles, why did you decide to help these individuals start their own business versus you helping them get a job?
Well, it depends on certain circumstances. So some people, based upon the position that they were learning to achieve, so computer programming, electronics, even in the medical field, there are certain companies that, unfortunately, because of certain activities on your criminal record, you cannot work for them.
Right.
So that may be a dream position, but you don't have the background to help you sustain that role. So you have to find a different method in order to achieve that goal. And that's what we work to do. So when we had people who couldn't get certain licensures based upon state guidelines and things of that nature, we had to find an alternative route for them to be able to still utilize the skills that they went to school for, in addition to the fact of being able to not let them feel like the amount of money they just invested in themselves was for mute.
Yeah, there's just like insurance. If you have any type of a criminal background, or especially with finances or fraud, then you can't sell insurance. So I understand exactly what you're saying.
And if you go into HVAC and you try to get a state licensure, you unfortunately cannot, depending on the type of crime that is on your background.
Right.
So you may have the skill set, but you don't have the ability to work in someone's home. But that doesn't stop you from owning and operating a company and having technicians up under your belt who can do the work for you, who do have those backgrounds.
That makes
sense. So the owner of the company may not be able to do the work, but he can hire people who can.
Okay.
And set a stage for those individuals who may have had the same problems that they had when they first started out.
Right. I think that probably gives a lot of people hope too.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So it's got to be a really rewarding career.
It is. It was. It still is. So I still, even to this day, umpteen years later, I still have students who reach out to me and tell me what a difference I've made in their lives. I've been invited to baby showers. I've been a part of people's weddings.
Right. You become a part of the family.
Yep.
Yeah.
Based upon the things that you're able to do. And one student who I remember greatly, he was a really troubled person, and no one could deal with him or his attitude except me. And I was the only person that got him to change, and he went from making no money to closely making, at this point, I think he's about $60,000 a year now.
That's wonderful.
And that's something that he never thought was possible. And all it took was someone to take the time to spend with him and explain to him how to operate his own life and create a difference for himself, and being there when the chips fall.
Right, and I think sometimes when people do lose hope, they become very self-destructive
They do.
and start to act out. So sometimes it just takes one person to say, hey, you can do this.
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes
Absolutely.
that's it.
Absolutely.
That's great. Tell me, in terms of team building, why it's important for a business owner to hire staff.
Well, again, going back to what we just said, people to support other people's initiatives. You as an owner do not always have the skill set or the specialty in order to maintain every customer that comes to your doorstep.
Right.
So you have a responsibility at that time to seek out other people who can support you in that role,
Okay.
so that you do not have to lose a potential customer.
Right.
So if you take the time to build a proper team, you basically, as we laugh and joke about it today, but you hire your weakness. If that's not your skill set, if that's not something you do on a regular basis, then you need to bring in someone who has the professional ability to do that.
Okay.
And that person substantially will help you become a better business owner, because now you have a team of people you can go to versus trying to do everything yourself. You know,
Right.
as they say, jack of all things, master at none.
Right.
Indeed.
Right. When should a new business owner hire staff? When do you recommend that?
Initially, when you decide to open a business. So I have a stern rule that if you are not a graphic designer, don't take your step into trying to design your own flyers, your own work, your own business cards. If you are not a website person, you should not be designing your own website. There are things that we see that we want to see, but we don't understand the functionality behind the source of what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
There are professionals who do. And if you have the right professional in your corner on a consistent basis, you have a better opportunity of getting the right price with the right service, versus you taking time from yourself and trying to implement this particular service provision that you have no education in.
Right.
Like, even to create a website, if you are the CEO of your company and you're designing your website and it takes you 8 weeks,
Yeah.
where it could take a professional who does websites all day long a week. What did you lose in that 8-week period?
A lot of productivity.
Not to mention, you lost the opportunity of being able to go out and get some new leads.
Exactly.
You lost the opportunity of getting new customers.
Right.
You lost the opportunity of doing business consulting, because you spent, give or take, without proper education, you would spend a minimum of 8 hours over an 8-week period. So you spend 60 plus hours designing a website that still wasn't good enough for you.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think when you talk about hiring someone, not in just a traditional sense, but in terms of outsourcing. So you just pay a flat rate, they do the work, you get it done, you can move on and do what you do best, which is you selling your business, something that you're already really passionate about. Because if you're not that passionate about websites, it might take you even longer.
Correct.
Because you're just not really interested in it anyway.
Correct. And the other thing about it is, a team is a team. It doesn't matter if they're contract or regular W-2.
Right.
A team is a team, and as long as they support you in the initiative that you're trying to obtain, that still is your team.
Okay.
So I think there's a misconception, because no matter whatever you do, even from an HR perspective, that is still your team. So you still
Right.
have rules, you still have regulations, you still have things that you need to do for that team member to be successful in their role.
Okay.
But again, that is your team.
Exactly. Great. That's I think that is a common misconception, that people, when they hear team or HR, they think full-time W-2 employee, and you're not necessarily saying that. You're just saying be efficient. Don't try to do everything yourself. Yeah. So why should I use a professional to help me hire staff, or do you recommend that?
I believe it's the best of both worlds. So you should have a professional. If you've never written a job description before,
Okay.
then you would hire a professional to help you at least carve out what your expectations are,
Okay.
so that it can meet
so that it can meet the needs of what's on the web. Okay. So a professional job description writer or technical writers, what we normally call them, they are skilled in being able to implement keywords and searches so that when people do look for your information or look for a position based upon some of the skills that you require, it can be found easily.
Okay.
If you don't have that skill set, again, going back to something you have to learn,
right.
Then it becomes a challenge to you as a whole. Additionally, it also helps to have someone who has a non-biased eye. So someone who will help you search and seize through the plethora of resumes or applications that you potentially could receive for your role and help you pick out the right candidates. Right. Again, that goes more than just looking at someone's skill set or having, if you get 500 applications, actually doing 500 cold calls, 500 interviews because you're trying to pick and choose
right.
who, what, when, where, why, or how. Those things are the most important elements in making sure that you make the right decision.
Okay, it sounds like, once again, this is helping you to be more efficient.
Absolutely.
Two people can get more work done than just one person.
Absolutely.
By themselves. Okay. Other than staff, what other members should I add to my team?
Well, I mean, you have, so if you are a sole proprietor LLC, then you're probably looking for an accountant for sure. You need to have a legal professional on standby at all given times.
Okay.
So that legal professional, it doesn't have to be an attorney that is with you every step of the way.
Right.
But I would always suggest that if you find an attorney that you can build a proper relationship with, again, human resources, you would pay them a flat rate per month. That way you can have all of your questions answered monthly versus trying to pull the information from Google or university.
Yeah. And one of the benefits of the Detroit Business Hub group is that we have an attorney as part of our group. And these hub group members would have access to that attorney that they would not otherwise have without having to pay a retainer or without having to pay, hundreds of dollars per hour to use this attorney's expertise. So really, when people look at how much the annual fee is, they're like, oh, I don't know if I can afford that. But I tell people, you really can't afford not to do something like this because it's giving you liability coverage that you otherwise might not have, because you really just don't know what type of legal problems you could run into when you're starting a business.
You are absolutely correct. I had a conversation with people just yesterday about the same thing and the misconception about what it takes to own and operate a business with brick and mortar.
Right.
And there was a total misconception, and because I am the oldest of the group, I'm also the most experienced.
Right.
It was very shocking to hear the misconceptions of how you operate a brick and mortar.
Okay.
That I definitely went into full gear from last night to this morning trying to correct the issue.
So give me some examples. Like, what's one common misconception about owning a brick and mortar?
So one misconception is that so we can take Airbnb for example. Just because Airbnb has its own level of insurance doesn't mean that you can't have your own.
Okay.
Misconception is Airbnb has insurance. Airbnb collects all my money. I don't have to worry about getting another insurance policy. That is absolute false. Because Airbnb doesn't cover you when someone is not in your space. It only covers you up to a certain amount of people. If you do not have the full disclosure of the insurance policy, you could definitely be in a much more graver state.
Okay.
Without having a secondary level of coverage. Not to mention the fact that Airbnb may not be a true insurance provider, which places you at a higher risk of if something does happen to your property, what do you do next?
Right.
Because the repair situation with them could take 30 to 90 days, whereas with your own insurance company, it could take 3 to 5 days, depending on who you have.
Right. So going back to like not having enough information or misinformation is you need those experts in your corner who can help you,
navigate
with those
the water.
Navigate and also help you know those things to look out for. So that how to avoid pitfalls, for instance.
Absolutely.
So it might cost you a little bit in the beginning, but it's worth it. Like my grandmother used to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely.
So it's worth, you making sure you have the proper coverages in place so that you can avoid, disaster and calamity later.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about taxes a little bit. What taxes do I pay when I hire staff?
So you're looking at your Social Security taxes, you're looking at your FICA. So respectively, you would say about 10% of a person's wage will go into your tax liability coverage.
Okay.
I prefer to use companies like Paychex. ADP is a little bit expensive, so if you're not moving that type of revenue, I wouldn't suggest that. Paychex actually is an entrepreneurial-based company, so they focus on the small business owner, and they have a lot of programs that help people with 1 to 3 staff members to all the way up to 100 plus. And they have really, really great customer service. So that's definitely one company, and they deliver their checks. Hello.
Right. That's convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paychex is one that I use quite often. I suggest people to, but now we have third-party softwares like Square just got into also doing payroll taxes and things of that nature. So, you know, FICA, your Social Security taxes, you also have your state and city taxes that have to come out of each person's paycheck. That's based upon where your business is located. So like, one of my businesses is located in Oakland County, so we don't have city taxes coming out.
But like City of Detroit would have city taxes.
Correct. City of Detroit, City of Hamtramck also has it. I don't remember if Pontiac does. So every city has its own level. But state taxes, federal taxes, then your unemployment insurance comes out of there as well. So it's a lot of variables. There's up to 10 deductions that occur prior to someone receiving their final paycheck. Which subsequently can equal up to about close to 10% of what somebody would take away.
Yeah, so you're talking about gross versus net.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, in my case, like with having no dependents, it's usually a lot more than 10%.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Most in today's economy, most average people are about 2 deductions. Because even if you are single, you probably do qualify for 1 more deduction. Some people qualify for 3 even though they are single. It just kind of also depends on what their other responsibilities are within their home. So those are things that once you look at your W-2 form, then you would identify what qualifying tax liabilities you have, and that's what dictates what the total amounts will be taken away. But if you do the basic math, I always tell people do finances backwards. When you get your first paycheck, it probably is going to be about between 10 and 12% deducted from your actual pay.
And then when talking about payroll as well, do these companies actually pay the taxes for you? Because
they do, absolutely. Absolutely. So they create a program for you. You input your payroll allotments, meaning the hours that your employees work, if you are doing W-2 employees. And then they actually will process the payroll for you and will cut the check and or direct deposit debit card.
But they're not actually paying the taxes. You're still responsible for paying.
No, they take the deduction out and they send it to the people. That's what I said. Depending on the program that you select, some people select that program, some people don't. I always help again going back to efficiency.
Absolutely.
If they allow you to do it,
I think you should.
Absolutely.
That keeps you out of trouble and keeps you clean from not having
and
to
all
worry
they have
about
to do is
employee
send you a
taxes.
report.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so with hourly employees, do you have that same opportunity, or is hourly and W-2?
Hourly and W-2 are the same. So,
yeah.
So your payroll schedule is dictated by you as the owner of the company. So you can pay them weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly. Most people who are in executive role are usually paid on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis. And then most of your middle to intermediate level employees are paid on a bi-monthly, bi-weekly, or weekly basis, depending on their role and depending on the function of how your income comes into the business. So there's a lot of decisions that happen at that point that will affect human resources as well. So that's something that you have to define before you even contact the payroll company, because those are questions they're going to ask you. You know, how do you pay your staff? Who's paid what? You have to define that. Go back to your job description. Your job description should identify what someone's value is
and how they're going to be paid.
And for the role that they're going to represent within your company. Once you determine that, then that information also goes to your Paychex company or your payroll company so that they can be able to, ensure that what you assume to be is absolutely correct across the United States. So
Okay.
you have to look at your city first. I always tell people to take 3 looks. Look at your city, look at your region, and then look at the actual United States as a whole as you identify someone's salary, because that also dictates how long they're going to stay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be offer competitive salaries.
Correct.
So if someone's a new business owner, say they don't have all this information, would you recommend them getting advice from someone such as yourself or Paychecks?
Absolutely.
Are these
Absolutely.
questions that they can ask them to get some guidance?
Absolutely.
If they don't know.
Absolutely. So Paychecks, I know for sure, they do a lot of consults in regards to people, onboarding with them as a payroll company.
Okay.
But every person, again, go back to building your team. Every person should have one HR consultant, even if it's only for, like we talked about earlier. So an accountant would be someone that you have on a quarterly basis. An attorney
Right.
could be a monthly or a quarterly basis. Human resources should be the same thing. Rules and laws change on a consistent basis.
Right.
Once those rules and laws are implemented, then you yourself as an employer can sign up to get that information sent to you. Just like minimum wage is definitely a space that you want to keep abreast of.
Yeah.
So minimum wage changed over in a short period of time. It was less than a month. It went from 8 and something to 9 something.
Yeah.
So that was a big adjustment for a lot of people.
Right.
And even if the person is a contract employee, you still have to maintain paying them at the rate of what the minimum wage rate is. And a lot of people thought that they didn't have to do that. And I said, well, how do you expect someone to work for you for less than this?
Yeah, you really can't pay anyone less than the minimum wage. That's why it's called minimum wage.
Correct. And it's a misconception. So that having those people in your corner to kind of educate you on a monthly or quarterly basis is, again, efficiency. It's the best way to make sure that you never have a problem. So, because even if you are a contractual based company,
Right.
meaning that you have 1099 employees, you still have to uphold the same laws as if you were an employer.
So you're saying if I'm a 1099 contractor and I pay employees just a straight hourly wage, I would still have to pay them the minimum wage.
You still have to, absolutely.
Okay. And how much do you think this would cost someone if they had, like an attorney on retainer, an HR person on retainer, an accountant, a realtor?
So an accountant is ranging between $125 to $250. HR professional is about the same. Attorneys are usually paid on a retainer. Then you either draw down the retainer or you can pay a monthly fee.
And then the retainers usually range.
So
Starting
some
at-
attorneys, I've seen them as between $500 to $1,500.
Yep, that's about the average.
And then the monthly fees are usually between $250 to $1,000.
Yeah, and for someone to join the Detroit Business Hub Group, it's $75 a month. So it's just like, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Indeed.
You can have all of these different resources and professionals at your disposal, or you can go out and individually pay all of these individuals. I mean, you're going to be paying so
definitely
much
come out of
more money.
Absolutely, you will.
Yeah, so I feel like the $75 a month is a real bargain. How do staff help me grow my business?
Well, again, it starts actually with the mission and vision of the company.
Okay.
So once the staff is brought on, that's what the part that you have to get them to commit to.
Right.
And then from that point, that's what identifies whether they're a consistent staffer or they're just here for a paycheck.
Right, right.
So if they're a consistent staffer, they're going to eat, sleep, and breathe the mission and vision of your company.
Right.
They're going to enjoy the space that they work in, and then they're going to help you push forward to bring in clientele, sales, or anything of that nature, even more potential employees. They're going to work just as hard as you are in order to develop the business. If they are someone that is just here for a check, they're only going to perform based upon the description that's given to them.
Right.
They're not going to do anything more. They're not going to do anything. I'm not going to say not do anything less, but they're not going to do anything more to grow the business,
Right.
to ensure longevity. Someone who is committed to the mission and vision will always work to ensure that longevity is there because they're looking to stay on beyond the terms of your general agreement.
Okay. How does hiring staff help me to leverage my time? You talked about that quite a bit already.
Yeah,
You
efficiency is all that it is, to be totally honest. But again, efficiency doesn't require you to be turned off.
Right.
As a business owner, you have a responsibility to be able to be tuned in to everything that happens in your business. So you may not always be physically present, but you need to be present. You need
Yeah.
to know what's happening. And that's what a lot of people take for granted, is the fact that when you look at a business, that you're looking at a business and saying, oh, once I hire this manager, I no longer have to go there. That is not the case.
Right.
You still have responsibility to show up. I just had some person say to me yesterday, well, I don't have time to go there
I said, oh, and the reason was COVID-19. I said, oh, so your name is on a lease on a building, but you don't have time to go to the building because of COVID-19. So if the building burned down tomorrow, what would you do? Because you wouldn't know until you decided to show up or somebody called you.
Right.
And they didn't have a response. They were confused as to why I asked the question. And I said, well, your name is on a lease.
Exactly.
Which holds you liable.
Right.
For the property and the contents of the property.
Right.
So if something goes wrong, you have a responsibility. They didn't understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's a misconception with franchisee owners who think, oh, I own this franchise now, like I can hire a whole bunch of staff, I never have to be there. And it's like, no, you're really hiring this, you're representing this company now, and you're probably going to be working more hours than you did on like a 9-to-5 job.
Correct. And that's the other misconception a lot of people have. So just because you no longer have a 9-to-5 doesn't mean that you're not going to work 60 hours a week.
Exactly. You're going to be working harder because now it's like your brand and name on the line versus the company you work with before. And you cannot
disconnect. In this day and age, you cannot disconnect yourself from your business.
No. It's kind of it's an extension of yourself.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. How can referral partners and networking groups help me build my team?
Well, it's, again, going back to what your need is. So talking to people, expressing what your need is at that given moment, and then they have resources or relationships that they can help you leverage to create your end result.
Right.
So building those things, like even for myself, I don't do my own website. I try not to do my own graphics. Like, I suck at it. I'm horrible. So I hire people who I know will dictate what my brand needs to look like on a consistent basis, and I pay them monthly. And it's a heck of a lot easier to do that versus me trying to go out and get a new flyer designer every time I need a flyer.
Yeah.
It just becomes a relentless, horrible cycle that I do not need to live on a daily basis.
It makes your job easier, and it should give you peace of mind too, because you're giving your workload to somebody else, so that frees up more of your time to do what
and the
you're
only
most
thing that goes
passionate
back
about.
to efficiency and timing is being able to set the clock.
Right.
So if you have someone who's constantly on your payroll, as opposed to you waiting a week's turnaround because they're new to you, you can actually set up your terms and conditions where this person would have to finish your required request, or that puts you ahead of everybody else.
Right.
So because you are what they call a one-off, so a one-off person is different from an account holder.
Okay.
Where an account holder pays a flat rate every month.
Right.
And then that way you end up getting what you need within a 24 to 48 hour period versus someone who is a one-offer. That person may take them 5 business days. Again, efficiency, making your time work for you in the best way possible.
Well, like you said, and that can be part of your contract too, that you both have an agreement on a work order or invoice or something to say, hey, this is when I'm going to turn this product or service over to you by. So I think having those terms and conditions is important too.
Absolutely, always.
Yeah. I had I know someone who still, it's been like probably close to a year, he's still waiting on his website to get updated. And I'm like, not acceptable. And it was just one excuse after another, but it's like, what can you do if there's nothing signed, there's nothing in writing, and you've already paid the person your money? Plus, they have rights to the site, and they're not like easily giving that information over. So they have total control. So
Which places you in a very discomforting position.
Yes, very vicarious position. What type of professional organization should I join as a new business owner? Do you have any recommendations? Or does it depend on your industry?
It does depend on your industry, and it also depends on what your end goal is. So I would say do your research in regards to your industry first, and then find potential mentors or subject matter experts that are already a part of some of the groups that you may be looking into.
Okay.
Like people are really focused on the Chamber of Commerce and things of that nature, but every chamber is not always the beneficial chamber.
I agree.
Based upon what you do for a living. So it may be great to be a part of the business hub from that chamber, but it may not be beneficial to you unless you know how to utilize the group members that are part of that chamber.
Yeah, you want to be able to monetize these networking groups and opportunities, because all of us have been a part of different groups where we met great people. They were nice people, made good connections, but at the end of the day, it didn't put any extra dollars in our pocket.
The growth was not there.
Yeah, so we need things that monetize our businesses instead of just draining our marketing dollars.
And monetizing the business is not just a financial thing.
Absolutely.
You can monetize your business by having the right relationships that open other doors that create more longer term agreements for you. So you may not always see it in the beginning, but any relationship that you develop with anybody, organization or person, should be defined within a 3 to 6 month period.
Okay.
If you can't find something realistic after that term, then you need to revisit why you met them in the first place.
Yeah, I think sometimes it requires re-education too, because a lot of us, frankly, like I had to get training on this myself, we don't really know how to professionally network. So this is how a lot of us network. Here's a scenario. I just go to an event. I'm kind of a wallflower. I'm a little shy. I force myself to pass out 10 or 20 business cards. I might get the other business owner's card. I might not. Then I walk away. That's the end of the event. I never hear from any of these people. They never follow up with me.
What was your follow-up?
Well, I can't follow up if I don't have the information, right?
So again, so for me, I would say an exchange for an exchange. If
Absolutely.
I give you a card, then you have to give me a card.
Right.
But at the same time, I would use that opportunity also to schedule a coffee. Schedule
Yes.
a 15-minute phone conversation.
Right.
You should never leave a room without at least 1 to 3 appointments. And
I
that
agree.
appointment doesn't have to be 30 minutes or an hour. It has to be a point to where you actually take the time to spend at least 15 minutes with someone to develop a more longer standing relationship.
I agree. And that should usually happen immediately after you've met this person. I would say within 24 to 48 hours.
I would say if you can do it at the time that you're there, I would schedule it then.
Yeah, because you've got that person's captive attention.
Correct.
That's really the best opportunity. Just take your phone out, look at each of you, look at your calendars, and put something on each other's schedules. And that's one thing that Tammy Turner taught me, because a lot of us really need help. And isn't she great? We need help in this area because we don't. Some of us did not know how to traditionally network, and it's not something that you're always trained on what to do. Even I've been in a couple of different training programs for real estate and insurance, and there was never any class or workshop or anything like that on networking. So I had to find out from reading books and meeting people like Tammy. You know, I found out from some of these outside organizations, but even some chambers that I joined, they never had any classes or workshops about that. So we kind of look at this old, like 20 to 30 outdated your model of passing out business cards, and then, you know, somebody gives you a business card back. That's great. If they don't, that's okay. And I think the point of networking is, like you said, it's for me to figure out how can I better help you? What can I do to build your business? And there should be some reciprocity there.
Indeed, and I think the other part of the conversation has to go beyond just what is it that I can do for you and what is it that you can do for me. Maybe it should be also dictated upon what makes you excited about what you do. So we spend a lot of time trying to focus our attention on what people do for a living, and not who people are for a living.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we spend more time with learning about the person before we focused on the business, then we probably would spend a lot more time getting further with the relationship. And that's one thing that a lot of us miss out on.
So you're saying, in other words, we need to spend more time getting to know other people versus
before you go after the business. Because if the business is going to be there, it's going to be there. But you could lose an opportunity to have a great mentor or a potential friend that is something totally off cuff. But it happens to be one of the best ways to develop the most promising relationships, because that person may be the 6th degree of separation that you really need to get to the person you want.
Gotcha. So in other words, you're saying you need to be able to build authentic relationships with other people. It can't be fake or phony. You can't go in saying, hey, I've got to close this deal today. It might not happen today. It might happen 1 to 3 months down the road. But like you're saying, within 3 to 6 months, you think there should be some type of fruition from meeting that person.
And everything has to be proactive, not reactive.
Right.
So when you're building a business, and again, going back to the HR module, if you are working on or focused on being reactive in the state of what we are right now, you will never, ever, ever see the fruits of your labor in the future.
Gotcha. So it's not just like a one-time thing.
Never.
It's continuous. It's like you're on a continuum. Well, thank you so much, Brandi, for joining us for this module. We'll be back to discuss how we can implement our business plan in a few moments.
Thank you.